Hello, everyone. My name is Julie McVey, and this is Unordinary Made Ordinary, where we talk to just everyday people about their extraordinary experiences. And today we're talking with Julie Hoyle. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Julie. It's such an honor to be here. And I absolutely love the title because that's the truth of it, right? Unordinary made ordinary. And I'm absolutely thrilled that these kinds of discussions are more open now, because certainly some years back, and certainly when I was growing up, they weren't. And it really created a lot of difficulty for a lot of people, because there was a tendency to want to sort of hide stuff away, or as in my case, feel like I was really weird because I didn't have anybody in my world that I could speak to about what I was perceiving and seeing and feeling. So
absolutely. I'm so glad we were able to connect. Yeah, it's real important to me to start being part of the solution to make this more of a, mainstream. Just let's talk about these things. It's okay.
Yes.
I was wondering if you could just share a little bit about yourself and maybe a little background, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. So I am, things change, but currently I'm a transformation coach, an intuitive artist, and an author. I've written 4 books. I'm currently on my 5th book about awakening, about what the awakening process is and what that looks like, and lucid dreaming and shadow work, because shadow work is really essential in terms of being able to accept the light that we already are. In order to do that, we have to then also accept, the darkness and the fear and the anger that might be in there that we've often inherited. So yes, so I'm very busy. I have a lot going on, and I'm absolutely delighted and thrilled to be able to share and to speak about these kinds of topics. And essentially, I was born into this world as a lucid dreamer. I used to leave my body all the time. I naturally thought other people did the same thing. And it wasn't until I was probably, 11 or 12 or 13 or something, that I realized that this wasn't the case. I was also very perceptive and intuitive, and I knew, and empathic, and I knew what people were feeling. Even if they put on kind of a bright, smiley, happy face, I knew exactly what was going on with them. And then I would have visitations as well from loved ones and angelic beings. And visits from loved ones who had passed on. They would come and give me messages to give to people, and so on and so forth. So it was like the whole sort of plethora, so to speak, of
that's a lot.
Yeah, so it was a lot. It was a lot to deal with. And what happened essentially is when I was, I think, around 14, I remember looking up at the sky and saying, this is too much responsibility. I can't deal with it. And I asked for it all to be closed down.
Oh.
And so, because I didn't know what to do with it, and I didn't know anybody else that I could have a conversation with. And I kind of wanted to be normal, for want of a better turn of phrase. So, and from that point on, I just kind of lived a normal life, went off to college and did my thing, trained as a teacher. And then in my early 30s, following a really intense back problem, I had two bulging discs in my back, and I was on bed rest for weeks and couldn't do very much of anything. And it was out of that, the recognition of the pain of that, and I started to draw and paint what that felt like. And it felt like it was linked to having closed everything down. And so I started to pray because I knew things needed to change. And then shortly after that, I had a lucid dream in which a master yogi who was revered in India, I didn't know who he was, but he was revered in India, and he gave me what is called Shaktipat, which is a spiritual initiation. It's the awakening of the Kundalini energy. And he tapped me on the top of the head, and my body was filled with the most incredible energy. And then I felt myself, travel through time and space and then come back into the physical body. And literally from that point on, my life was never the same again.
Wow. Wow. So I'm thinking you probably wrote a book about this. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, that was the first book, which is titled An Awakened Life, A Journey of Transformation.
Mm.
And the part of the reason that I had no intention of writing a book. I mean, that was not even on my radar. But what happened was, I think it was in 2007, 2008, I had another lucid dream. And let me just say that the big lucid dream with the awakening was in 1989.
Oh.
And it was in 2008. And I had lots of dreams and initiations and things in between. But in 2008, another master yogi came to me in the dream, and she said, "When are you writing the book?" So I said, "What am I supposed to write about?" And she just kind of looked at me as if to say, "Come on now." And anyway, I woke from that dream, and I just said, "There's no way I'm going to write a book unless it comes through and is kind of channeled, so to speak." Mm-hmm. I'm not writing a thing because I don't want it to come from ego. I just, that didn't interest me. I never wanted to be an author. It has to be channeled, kind of, or received, however you want to put that. Otherwise, I'm not interested. So then I just forgot all about it. And about maybe a month later, my husband and I were invited to take care of a beautiful home on Grand Bahama Island overlooking the ocean, because the owners were going away. They were going to travel around Europe, and they essentially wanted us to take care of their dog. So I said, "That sounds nice. Yeah, we'll do it, of course." So a few days in, I went up on the balcony, and I was sitting there with my coffee looking at the ocean, and the palm trees. And all of a sudden I started to hear the book. It was being downloaded. So then I grabbed a pen and paper and just started writing it. And that was how it was given. And wow. That was how that book and that account came about. So, and that was just the beginning.
Wow. How long ago? You said 2008?
That was 2008.
That's fantastic.
Yes. And that's essentially the way it works. I get a directive, usually in a lucid dream, or I'll hear a message to do something. And even if I don't have a clue, and for example, I didn't have a clue about how to write the book or how to find a publisher or what to do about any of that. But you know how these things go. As soon as you say, yeah, obviously it has to feel like it's aligned and it's, the right thing for you. But the minute we say yes, it's like the grace of the universe shows up and supports our efforts. And that's really the way it works.
Wow, that is quite amazing. So it sounds like you've had so many different kinds of experiences just from childhood and so on. So it's kind of like you said, there's so much. I'm not even sure what to ask, but I am kind of curious. During childhood, you said when you had these, visitors from loved ones who had passed on, or out-of-body experiences, you did not share that with your family?
No, and in fact, I have very few regrets in life, right? But the one regret I do have is when I was 8 years old, I was laying in bed, it was kind of in the middle of the night, early in the morning or so. And I started to feel as if I was waking up. And that's usually what happens. I start to feel like I'm waking up, but what's happening is my awareness is moving either to the throat or the third eye or the crown center. And what happened is I started to move out of my body and float away. And then I look back and there's my body, asleep in bed. And then I passed through the window. I could feel something was calling me. and I floated through the window, and then I went down into the backyard, and my grandfather was standing there, and on either side of him were two massive angels, the most exquisite angels I've ever seen. And I've seen angels a few times, but I landed and I started to cry because I knew what the visit represented. And so he said to me, "Don't cry, it's okay." He said, "I just came to say goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
Be a good girl, take care of your brothers, everything's going to be okay, and I love you."
Oh.
And yes, and then he said what he needed to say, and then he just started to float up, and the angels just took him. And
Wow.
so then what happened was I was pulled back to the body, and I entered back into my body, and then I sat up, and I looked at the clock, and it was 5 a.m. And then of course I couldn't get back to sleep, and I knew that my grandfather had passed away. So what happened was I got up and got ready to go to school, and I had 4 brothers and a sister, and I used to have to take care of them, and we all went off to school, and the whole day I didn't say anything to anybody because I was afraid. I was also afraid because I'd been raised a Catholic, and so that was imprinted. So, and I didn't feel safe sharing these things. So what happened is that I went to school and then came back later that day, and then I walked in the back door, and my mum said, "Be quiet, behave yourselves." She, said it to all of us, "Your grandfather died this morning." So I remember I tiptoed into the lounge. My father was sitting there staring, into the fire. But I just couldn't find the words to tell him. And it wasn't until much, much, much later, when I was in my, I guess, 30s, that I told him, and he just said to me, "I wish you'd told me. I wish you'd told me. I wish you'd told me." So, yeah, so this is why I so respect and love and I'm very grateful for this work that you're doing, Julie, because even if it affects and helps one person, it will make a huge difference.
Oh, thank you. I hope so. I mean, I have not been gifted like you have been gifted, but I've always since childhood been connected, felt like I had this connection to this higher source,
Yeah.
being, and could never let that go, just always was seeking,
Yes.
and
Yes. And the thing as well is that connection never diminishes. It's always there. It's the one thing that doesn't come and go. It's the one thing that remains. It's the one thing that's here, even in the darkest moments. As long as you remember to go inside yourself and sort of connect in and pray, or whatever it is that you do to connect you in. It is that is unfailing. That's what the master yogis say.
Okay, so what is your training now, and what are your practices these days?
Well, let me just kind of back up a bit, because
absolutely.
So for years and years and years, following that radical awakening, I used to spend hours meditating and chanting and doing japa, which is a yogic term for repeating a mantra, silently repeating a mantra. And so I used to repeat the mantra that the yogi had given me in the lucid dream, which is Om Namah Shivaya, which essentially Om is the primordial sound. Namah means I bow to, and Shivaya means supreme consciousness. So you're essentially saying, I bow to supreme consciousness. I bow to, or another way of saying it, I bow to absolute awareness or source itself. I honor that within my own being, and I trust that within my own being. So I did that for years and years and years, and had quite an intense practice. And then I think it was around 2015 or 16, the whole seeking, because I was still a seeker in many ways, but that all completely fell away, and there was a recognition that source itself is already here, from the place in which I am seeing, from the place in which recognition is happening. So in other words, when, for example, you read the words of Hafiz or a great being or a saint or whatever, the place from which you're recognizing this truth is source itself, and you can never be removed from it.
Beautiful.
Yes. So so in terms of the practices, the main kind of, I can't even call it a practice, but the main thing that has been ongoing for the last several years is just deepening into the silence within my being prior to the words arising, or even if I'm speaking, the place from which the words arise come from source itself or silence itself. Silence is another term for source.
Interesting. I mean, I've heard that before, you know, in more than one, with more than one religion and practice.
Yes. And you know, you don't even have to take my word of great beings. We have our own evidence, right? Because if you think about every single time you go out into nature, for example, and you just look at the majesty of the sky, or you watch a sunrise or sunset, or you're listening to I love to hear the palms clicking in the breeze. That silence, that feeling of expansion, that feeling of connectedness is source itself. And it is always here and it is always available. You know, when we recognize this and when we are willing to step out of the noise of the mind and the kind of the movement of the mind and the stories in the mind and, you know, all of those things that continually play themselves out.
Is it your understanding that meditation, and I assume you do daily meditations, is a way of training our minds so that when we're not meditating, we are better connected to source, more present, and able to receive source and get the clutter out? Just maybe that'll be easier for us the more we practice the meditation.
Yes, I mean, that it really is very beneficial. You know, having a seated practice is very helpful. But the thing that I always do encourage people to realize as well is that, let's say that you're a busy single mom with 3 kids, or you're trying to, you know, you've got 2 jobs because you need to generate income or whatever. You know, it can sometimes be hard to create space in the morning to have a seated practice for 15, even 20 minutes, which isn't that long, but, you know, and you've got kids and the craziness. And so there can be a tendency to label yourself as not being good at meditating, or you don't have time to meditate, rather than saying, okay, I can bring meditation into my daily activities. So, for example, when you're in the kitchen chopping vegetables or doing the dishes, you can just focus on doing that.
Right.
And bring the mind to that, right? Because that is meditation.
Absolutely.
Actually.
Rather than let your thoughts go all over the place, thinking about the past or worrying about the future and all of this clutter, just practice focusing on your present activity.
Yes.
Is a meditation.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're peeling a potato, just completely focus on what your hands are doing.
I love that. That's so easy.
It's so easy. And, you know, and the reason that became kind of my go-to, and I'm especially when I'm working with clients and, you know, speaking and sharing and so on and so forth, is that many years ago, I remember I was at a retreat with a meditation teacher, meditation master actually, and a woman came with that same issue. She was complaining. She was saying, these retreats are great and thank you very much and the practices are awesome, but I've got 3 kids at home and there's absolutely no way, and they're aged from 2 to 9 or something. I can't. And he said to her, he said, do you clean your house? She said, yes. He said, do you cook? She said, yes. That's all I'm doing, clean the house and cooking and taking care of the kids. So he said, okay, then when you're cleaning, repeat the mantra or say your prayer. When you're cooking, repeat the mantra or say your prayer, because a mantra is also, it's a form of meditation. So as long as you're doing that or watching your hands and going into silence, you're meditating.
But you have to do practice the mantra without also having your thoughts somewhere else, because our minds are so busy. We can be in a mantra, and then it will be, multitasking all these other thoughts.
Yes, yes. And so that's why oftentimes what I say is watch your hands, because when you're watching your hands, somehow doing the activity, the mind becomes quiet. It's a kind of a simple thing, but it's very effective.
Huh. Interesting. Okay, I wish I knew all of these things when I was raising my kids,
Sure.
but now I do.
Yeah, and look, and the other side of all that too is, even if you could create time in the morning to sit and meditate for an hour or 30 minutes or whatever, if you're sitting and all you're doing is ruminating on what you're going to be doing for the rest of the day, it's kind of useless.
Absolutely.
So what I say is, the more you can organically bring awareness and bring silence, essentially become aware of your own silence, is what you're doing actually. And watching the stillness and sitting in that place from which the movement of the mind arises, then it's a much more, I would say, accessible practice, because you can do it pretty much anywhere.
I understand that meditation, regular meditators can be better astral projectors as well, out of body. They can have a higher level of consciousness and lucidity. They can bring more memories back with them. Would you say that? You're nodding, so you agree with that?
Yeah, well, yes and no. And again, what happens is, I actually wrote a book on lucidity, Wake Up and Say Yes, a handbook on lucid living and lucid dreaming, because the way it works essentially is, even if you do all the practices that you want to do, right, if you're not present in your own life, in the day-to-day movement of your own life, whatever it is you're doing, working, taking care of your family or whatever, then you're not going to be lucid or aware in the dream state. One is a mirror for the other. So the more lucid, and this is why I give daily kind of day-to-day organic kind of practices, because the more aware you are in your daily life, the more you'll be able to wake up essentially in your dreams. Because with respect to lucid dreaming, what happens is, and I can speak from direct experience, I'll be in the middle of what I will call a regular dream, and there's like kind of craziness, and then I'll either see my hands, or there'll be this resonance or memory or remembrance. This is a dream and I'm dreaming. And so with that, then there's this complete movement into lucidity, and then usually the whole sort of dream landscape changes, and I either travel or I'll visit with master yogis or teachers or whoever, and everything just shifts and changes. It's almost like these curtains open up.
Yes, I have practiced lucid dreaming, and I really enjoy it. For me too, when I become lucid, and it's usually something, it's like a trigger, a repetitive dream will often trigger me to remind me, oh, wait a minute, I'm in a dream. And as soon as I notice that, the dream elements sort of dissolve, fade away. And then it's like, oh, now what do I do?
Yes.
And so interesting. So you have been using that time to go see, what you're saying is go see yogis and maybe get some learning in.
Or they will just show up, they just walk. Oftentimes I've had what I call regular dreams, and then a yogi will come walking across it.
And trying to wake you up.
Yeah, and I immediately recognize them. And then other times I'm completely awake. I'm in the dream and I'm walking through this landscape that often reminds me of India, even though I haven't been to that particular town or city or whatever. And then I'll see this master yogi or great being, and sometimes I'll go searching for them because I can sense that they're there, and I'll go looking for them.
Is that always what you do? Do you do other explorations when you are lucid dreaming out of body? I'm not sure how you label that, but do you do other things other than learning situations?
Yeah, oftentimes I'm teaching as well. I mean, in one instant, and I do teach a lot in lucid dreams. So in one, I'll give you just one example. I was teaching a group of healers how to work energetically and shamanically with their clients, again in the dream state. And one of the people in the group asked the question about lucid dreaming. She said, you know, I probably, when I wake up, I won't remember this dream. How can I lucid dream? So and be conscious of it. So I said to her, the way to have more success, so to speak, with lucid dreaming is to become conscious in your waking state, because one is a mirror for the other. So what happened then is that a couple of nights later, I had a lucid dream with a great being whose name is Papaji, and he's well known in India. And he came to me and he said to me, what you told the group is true. He said, you have to be lucid and awake in your waking state in order to be lucid and awake in the dream state. And he said, there is no better moment than now.
I need to get your handbook.
The
lucid dreaming.
It's such a simple statement, right? It's so simple. There is no better moment than now. And what happens is,
true,
we throw this moment away because we're either ruminating about the past or kind of like trying to figure out what we're doing next week or tomorrow or next year. It's like this.
Well, I mean, some of our thoughts don't they have to be on planning ahead and for work related and, just living.
Yes, of course. Yes, of course.
But it's that balance, I guess, that you can't just constantly be out.
Yes.
Thoughts all in a daydream, kind of.
Yeah. And not paying attention to what is happening now. And if you're not paying attention, then you miss all the signs and the symbols, because nature is always speaking to us. You can see messages in the clouds or in the way the trees are moving, or you might see something, and again, this is a shamanic way to look for power totems and animals or insects that show up in your space to give you a message. And all those things are happening all the time. But, if we're like in the mind and our mind spinning, then we miss everything. Yes.
I was wondering if you think that's part of our purpose, humanity's purpose, is to learn how to be in the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I'm absolutely certain that is what's happening, especially with respect to the situation we're finding ourselves in now, because certainly what's happened is it almost felt like there was a big, pause or reset button pushed through the quarantine, the COVID, especially in the beginning. And a lot of people are reevaluating what they're doing with their lives, why they're doing what they're doing, and creating shifts and changes as a consequence. So in many ways, there's been a lot of good that's come out of it. There's been upheaval and a lot of pain too, but there's been a lot of positives that have come out of what's been happening. And it's all about just saying, wait a minute. I don't have to do this anymore. Or in the same way, let's say. That's
right. One of the reasons, for me, that I started the channel was I started the YouTube channel, not channeling, was that I was reevaluating what brings me joy, what resonates with me and brings me joy. It's time to start doing those kinds of things. And this is fun for me, to meet these interesting people with fascinating experiences. And I'm just learning so much. I love learning and sharing with people. So I was wondering if you would want to share any other kinds of unusual experience, because we're getting slowly out of time, believe it or not, but any other kinds of unusual experiences that you'd want to share with us. And I want to learn a little bit more about your art that you're talking about, if that's okay.
Yeah, that sounds good. I mean, quite honestly, where do I even begin with my experiences? I mean,
I know.
honestly, it's just, well, look, here's one that I would say people find interesting from many perspectives. So again, I think it was on or around July 2008 or 9 or something like that. So my husband and I were in the UK visiting family, and we were all set to take a train journey from London up to Nottingham, and it was around 2.5 hours. And I realized we got on the train and I hadn't got anything to read. And so I said, oh no, 3 hours. And I didn't have any devices or anything with me at the time. And then I remembered I picked up a free little magazine from a Mind Body Spirit bookstore in London. And, I was just coming out the door and I just saw this rack with these free magazines. I just picked one up and stuffed it in my bag and forgot all about it. So anyway, I remembered I got that. I said, hey, great. So, I went and grabbed it and sat down. And I opened it up. The magazine was titled Connections. And I opened up the magazine and my kind of interest landed on an article written by a well-known healer in the US whose name is Barbara Brennan. You may know her. Yes. Her name's Barbara Brennan. She's written all kinds of books and, she's very well known. So she was writing about, in this article, she was writing about the importance of utilizing your creative and spiritual energy. Creative energy and spiritual energy are essentially one and the same. Mm. So she was speaking about the importance of utilizing that and utilizing it in a way that uplifts humanity. So I was literally 3 or 4 sentences in, and I got this message, this download that said, you can do that. You can write articles that inspire people. So it landed with me so strongly. I closed the magazine and I put it down and I said to my husband, do you have anything to write with? And he said, I said, have you got a pen? He said, no. He said, I've got a pencil. So he handed me the pencil. I said, have you got any paper? He said, no, I've got a couple of napkins. So I said, okay. So I just took the napkins and then was hearing this article and I wrote it on the napkins. And then we got to Nottingham and I went to the local library and I signed up for an account and I went in there and used the computer and sat down and drafted my first article and knew I had to send it to the editor of the magazine I had been reading. And I knew when I hit the publish button that it was going to be published. So literally, I think by early September, end of August, early September, I heard back from the editor. He said, we love the article, we want to use it, and can you do some more? And that was what started my career writing articles for Mind, Body, Spirit magazines. And to date, I think I've written maybe for 20 magazines or something like that.
Oh my goodness.
So
it's crazy. That's fantastic though, how things happen.
Yeah. because what happens is there's an absolute recognition and trust that what I'm feeling and perceiving in that moment is from source itself. It's a directive from source itself, and that I'll be shown the way even if I don't have a clue.
Wow. And then how did the artwork come up? Now, is that your piece behind you? Is that one of your pieces?
That was just that was a demo I did when I was working with a group of teenagers who hadn't painted before. So we were just using finger painting and using bamboo sticks and
Do you do online classes too?
Yes, I do online classes. I've got one titled Honoring Your Soul Contract, which is on Coursecraft, which has been really popular. And then I have a lot of art on Fine Art America. And yes, and the reason I love to teach intuitive art is because, especially to adults who tell themselves they can't draw and they can't paint, it's really a fantastic way to just connect in and go into that space and then allow that, what you're hearing and feeling, just to kind of play itself out in terms of line and color and pattern and shape. And it's a fantastic way to just listen.
I really am. I think I might like that. Now I have done, this is going to sound silly, but I have done 2 paint and pour classes.
Yes.
You've heard of
Yeah.
those?
Yes, we have those here. We call them sip and paint, and there's nothing wrong with those. Those are absolutely fine. But the thing that I what puts me off is you've usually got an instructor with a picture of, I don't know, marigolds or something, and everybody does the same thing.
Right.
Whereas with the classes that I teach and the way I teach, it's really about, we have a theme, and I'll give it a few demos and examples, but then everybody is encouraged to go in and dive in and create from their own space and place of seeing and intuiting. And I'll just help with the sort of technical aspects. So it's a lot of fun, and people are just absolutely amazed at what comes out, to be honest. And it usually has very deep and profound meaning, because it's a soul speaking through color and form and light and shape and pattern.
I like that idea. I might try that. I mean, I enjoy writing. I've been writing, lyrics, song lyrics and poetry and things since I was little. But it's always been just a way of expression, of getting things out of me,
Yes.
and it's
Yes.
been very helpful. Yeah, it's been very helpful over the years.
Yeah, because there's an energy when you connect in with source itself, and the words or the art comes from that place. There's an energy that's inherent in that too, right? And so the work becomes a vehicle. I always say it's a vehicle for the awakening power.
Mm.
So what happens is, and I've heard this consistently from people who've read my books, they will have their own awakening experiences because of reading the book. I mean, one woman said she sat and read the first book and she was crying for 3 hours straight, because there was this recognition in what I was sharing, that was what she had been looking for. So, and I stand behind these words, and I'm not saying this from an egoic perspective. It's because I trust the place from which these gifts of grace are given, which source itself.
Are these awakenings? Now, I've heard of Kundalini awakenings, and I really am not sure what that means. Can you explain what that means?
Yes, so in the sort of yogic terminology, the way the master yogis put it is that one's spiritual energy lies dormant in the base of the spine. That's the way they describe it, like a coiled serpent, coiled around 3.5 times. And oftentimes through trauma, or through pain and suffering, or through meeting a great being, one's energy can start to move and awaken, and it literally starts to move up through the spine and through the body, until it eventually merges with the crown chakra, and you become fully realized. So it's, and these descriptors you'll find in Christian terminology and in the Buddhist faith. They just have different ways of experiencing it, or speaking about it. It's essentially just the awakening of the one's spiritual energy.
Can you have more than one, or is there just one and that's it?
Yeah. Well, there's usually one to begin with, right? There's one shift or awakening that happens that can be quite radical, or it can be quite subtle. And then there's successive ones, so that you deepen into your own self-recognition. And we know this already too, right? When you might do a class, or you might read a book, and you suddenly have this shift or this movement in consciousness where you start to see more clearly, and things change often in an organic way. Your perceptions become kind of more acute. Your sensitivities are more aligned. You become more intuitive. Your own, yeah. So, and then synchronicity starts to happen in your kind of waking state. That's always another sure sign that there's been an awakening.
Well, when one time, a couple of years ago, when all of this started opening up to me, this kind of metaphysical kind of spiritual world, not that I was not spiritual before, but just in a different way, I had an experience. I had been learning about meditation and practicing techniques, and I call this on my channel, good vibrations, my first experience with good vibrations. And I was sleeping, but I was going into that, I was coming out of sleep, and I was in that in-between state. And suddenly I had just all over body vibrations that were I've never had them quite that powerful since, but very powerful. I felt like I might have been shaking the bed, like, why isn't my husband waking up?
Yeah.
And I had light. I could see through my non-physical eyes, like light emanating from me. And the music was so amazing. I don't even know where it came from. I can't express. It was so beautiful. It was like wind was musical, and not chimes, but it was this strange, beautiful music. I had tears because I just felt like the love of the divine like filling me. It was so I don't know. I don't know what that was. Is that an awakening or
Yes.
something?
Yes.
Oh,
That's
okay.
for sure. That is really an awakening. And I'm really with you in terms of the sound of the music that you hear. It is beyond anything that even the most beautiful sounds in the waking state, the pale in comparison. And the thing that I'll always remember is whenever I've had many experiences with angels, angelic beings coming into my space, and with Jesus as well. And oftentimes they would come in ahead of Jesus's arrival. And there's a tinkling sound of the finest, most incredibly beautiful kind of bells
Mm-hmm.
that would fill the space and fill my entire being. And I would just was in ecstasy.
Yes. Very
And
interesting.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm not sure why I haven't experienced that since. I do continue, I get these vibrational everybody talks about in the astral, who studies out of body and astral stuff, the vibrational state, that's what you want to have so you can get out of body. Do you see that differently than what I just shared? Is that two different things, or is it similar? Do you
but
know?
well, the way I would put it is that when whatever, in terms of, if you can call it an experience, I would say it's a lot more of an experience, more than an experience, because it changed you, obviously. The movement of that energy was an act of grace. It happened on its own and in its own way. It wasn't like you were trying to force something. And these things happen the more in tune we are with the silence and with the wonder and with the amazement. That the flow of grace again happens on its own accord without trying to manipulate or control it. So I don't know whether that's answering your question, but essentially, the more we listen to our own silence, the more we trust our own intuition, the more we tension, the more these incredible acts of grace manifest. And that's certainly been true in my case. I mean, just incredible things have happened again and again and again and again. Because of the willingness to let go of the story, instead of hanging on to the story of who I am and, all the things that worrying me and upsetting me.
It's funny you put it that way, kind of going, I know we have to get going, but going back to lucid dreaming, I was just sharing with someone how when I'm in a dream, just a regular dream, and I often am very urgent before I become lucid. I have it, something is so urgent. I have to get it done. I have to accomplish it. It's so urgent in my subconscious dream state that it's almost keeps me from becoming lucid. And then when I become lucid, I think, why was I so, why do I care? This is a dream. Let that story go.
Yes.
Become awake.
Yes.
Right now. Become conscious. Let all that story go.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so simple, right? The movement of that it's outside of time. It's like it takes 3 hours or something. It's just like instant.
Amazing conversation. I've really enjoyed this. I do want, I'll make sure and put, well, you can share how the listeners can contact you if you'd like, and then I'll also put links in the description.
Okay, so I can be found on Instagram at Julie Hoyle Official. And I also have a website, which is juliehoyle.org. So everything that you might be interested in is on there, you know, the books, links to the books, and my courses, and, you know, all the other, my channel and all of the other good stuff. Oh, and if anybody wants to send a private message, you can find me at truealignment@yahoo.com.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing. This has been fascinating. I'm so excited about what I'm going to be learning after I get your books. Anyway, thank you everyone for watching. This has been Julie McVey with Unordinary Made Ordinary. And I do hope you will join us again for another fascinating interview. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you like this type of content, of course, please subscribe and then hit the bell icon. So then you'll be alerted to other videos that come up in the near future. And I do hope you're having a wonderful day or evening, wherever you are on the planet or off the planet. And I'll see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.